No one dared speak to the Mafia boss's silent son until a brave waitress did the unthinkable, changing both their lives forever. Before the story begins, wherever life has placed you today, this message is for you. The Giovanni restaurant stood on Fifth Avenue like a fortress of elegance. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and clientele, who whispered rather than spoke. Emma Clark had worked there for 3 months, long enough to recognize the regulars, long enough to understand the unspoken hierarchy among the staff. But nothing prepared her for him. He arrived every evening at exactly 7 o'clock. The manager would personally escort him to the private corner booth, the one permanently reserved with a discreet brass plaque reading "Private." The entire staff would suddenly become extraordinarily busy elsewhere. Even Marco, the head waiter who'd worked there for 15 years, would find urgent tasks in the kitchen whenever this particular guest arrived. Emma noticed because she was assigned to the section adjacent to his table. She noticed because she was curious by nature, and she noticed because of the child. The man, mid-30s, devastating in the way dangerous things are devastating, always brought a boy. 8 years old, maybe 9. The child never smiled, never spoke, just sat there like a beautiful statue, his dark eyes distant and empty, picking at whatever food was placed before him. "Who is that?" Emma had asked Sophia, another waitress, during her second week. Sophia's face had drained of color. "You don't ask about him. You don't look at him. You definitely don't approach his table." But the child, especially not the child. The way everyone avoided even glancing toward that corner booth troubled Emma more than any explanation could have. She'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes that ranged from indifferent to cruel. She recognized the look in that boy's eyes, the look of someone who'd stopped hoping the world could be kind. Tonight, like every night, the man sat with perfect posture in his black blazer and white shirt that probably cost more than her monthly rent. A gold chain glinted at his throat. His hair was slicked back with precision, his stubble beard immaculately groomed. Everything about him screamed power and control, and money. The kind of money that didn't come from legitimate sources. The boy sat across from him, untouched pasta growing cold on his plate. The man's phone buzzed constantly. Business that couldn't wait even during dinner with his son. Each time he answered, his voice dropped to that dangerous whisper that made the air feel heavier. Emma was clearing table 6 when it happened. The boy's fork clattered to the marble floor, rolling directly to her feet. She bent automatically to retrieve it, then looked up, and found herself staring into those sad, dark eyes. For just a moment, something flickered there. A question, maybe. Or a plea. She should have just handed the fork to the man and walked away. That's what everyone else would have done. That's what she'd been explicitly warned to do. Instead, Emma smiled at the child. "That's okay, sweetie. Forks are slippery little things, aren't they? Let me get you a fresh one." The boy's eyes widened slightly. Behind him, she sensed rather than saw the man's complete attention shift to her like a spotlight. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Emma kept her focus on the child. "You know what? When I was your age, I dropped my fork at least once every meal. My foster mom used to say I did it on purpose just to see the pretty sound it made on the floor." The smallest hint of curiosity crossed the boy's face. Not a smile, not yet, but something that wasn't complete emptiness. "Emma." Marco's voice came from somewhere behind her, tight with warning. "The kitchen needs you." But the man spoke first. His voice was silk over steel, with an accent that suggested Italy by way of Brooklyn. "Let her finish." It wasn't a request. Marco vanished like smoke. Emma retrieved a clean fork from her apron and placed it beside the boy's plate with exaggerated ceremony. "There you go, sir. A brand new fork for a brand new attempt at pasta excellence." The boy's lips twitched. Just barely, but it was there. "You know," Emma continued, ignoring every survival instinct screaming at her to walk away, "I used to hate eating too when I was sad. Food just tasted like nothing, like eating cardboard." The boy's eyes locked onto hers with sudden intensity. like she'd just spoken a secret password he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. But then I learned a trick. Emma leaned in conspiratorially. Every bite, I'd imagine it was something magical. Like this pasta? I'd pretend each piece was a little dragon, and I was a knight having a dragon feast after winning a great battle. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The restaurant hummed around them, distant conversations, the clink of silverware, the soft jazz from hidden speakers. But at this table, time held still. Then the boy picked up the new fork. He speared a single piece of penny. He looked at it seriously, like he was considering Emma's suggestion, and he put it in his mouth. When he swallowed, something impossible happened. The corner of his mouth lifted, just a fraction of an inch, just for a second. But it was there. A smile. Emma felt her heart squeeze. In that moment, she wasn't a waitress in an expensive restaurant she could barely afford to eat at. She was just someone who'd managed to reach another human being trapped in darkness. "Well done, brave knight," she whispered. Then she straightened and finally, allowed herself to look at the man. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not anger, though there was intensity there that made her pulse quicken. Not gratitude, though something vulnerable flickered in those dark eyes before disappearing behind walls that probably predated his son. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that made her nervous. Sharp jaw, strong features, the kind of presence that made everyone else in the room seem like background extras in his personal movie. But it was his eyes that held her, dark, calculating, and in this moment, utterly focused on her face like he was memorizing every detail. "Thank you," he said quietly. 2 words that carried the weight of something much larger. Emma nodded, suddenly aware that she'd just crossed a line everyone else was too smart to approach. "Just doing my job." "No." His voice dropped even lower. "You weren't." She should leave. She should absolutely leave right now. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma Clark. Emma Clark." He repeated it like he was filing it away somewhere important. "How long have you worked here?" 3 months. "And in 3 months, has anyone told you who I am?" The honest answer was yes, through frightened whispers and averted eyes, through warnings and unspoken rules. But the specific details, those had been deliberately withheld, as if saying his name aloud would summon something dangerous. "I know you're important," Emma said carefully. "I know everyone's afraid of you. And I know that little boy deserves to smile more often." Something flashed across his face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Like she'd just said something significant that he hadn't expected. "Go back to work, Emma Clark." It wasn't dismissive. It was protective. "Thank you for your kindness to my son." Emma nodded and turned away, acutely aware of his gaze following her across the restaurant. When she reached the kitchen, Sophia grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. "Are you insane?" Sophia hissed. "Do you have any idea who that is?" "Apparently not. Why don't you enlighten me?" Sophia pulled her into the back room away from the other staff. Her hands were shaking. "That's Dante Moretti. The Dante Moretti. He runs half the organized crime in this city. The Moretti family controls everything from the docks to downtown. Men who cross him disappear, Emma. Entire families have been destroyed for less than what you just did." Emma's stomach dropped. She'd heard the name Moretti whispered in connection with the restaurant. Rumors about who really owned it, about why certain people received special treatment. But she'd convinced herself they were just urban legends, the kind of stories that grow in the dark corners of expensive establishments. "I just talked to his kid," Emma said weakly. "No one talks to that kid. No one even looks at that kid. There are rules, Emma. Unspoken rules that everyone understands." "Why? What happened to him?" Sophia's expression turned pained. 2 years ago, the boy's mother was killed in a territory war with a rival family. The child was there. He saw everything. He hasn't spoken a single word since that night. Emma's heart shattered. That explained the emptiness in those young eyes, the way he moved through the world like a ghost. "That's horrible." It's also not our business. Sophia's voice gentled slightly. Look, you seem like a good person. But good people don't last long when they get involved with men like Dante Moretti. Just keep your head down, do your job, and stay far away from that table. But when Emma returned to the dining room, she found an envelope on the service station with her name written in bold, precise handwriting. Inside was $500 in crisp bills and a note on heavy cardstock, foreseeing what others choose to ignore. DM Emma stared at the money, knowing she should refuse it, knowing acceptance meant something she didn't fully understand yet. She kept it anyway. When she looked toward the corner booth, Dante Moretti was watching her with an expression that promised this wasn't over, not by a long shot. For the next 3 days, Emma told herself to forget the encounter. $500 sat in her apartment drawer like evidence of something she couldn't name. She picked up extra shifts, stayed busy, kept her head down exactly as Sophia had advised. But Dante Moretti and his silent son didn't forget her. They arrived at 7 o'clock as always, but now when the boy sat down, his eyes would search the restaurant until they found Emma. And when they did, that tiny, almost smile would appear for just a second before disappearing again. Emma tried to stay in her section, tried to let Marco and the other senior staff handle Table 9, but on Thursday evening, the manager himself approached her during pre-service. Mr. Moretti has requested you specifically as his server tonight, Giuseppe said, his Italian accent thick with stress. I trust you understand this is both an honor and a responsibility. It felt more like a summons. When 7 o'clock arrived, Emma approached Table 9 with her heart hammering against her ribs. Dante Moretti sat in his usual position. Black blazer, white shirt open just enough to reveal that gold chain, his presence commanding the corner like a throne room. But tonight, he wasn't on his phone. Tonight, his complete attention was on her from the moment she approached. Good evening, Mr. Moretti, Emma said, proud that her voice remained steady. It's nice to see you again. The pleasure is mine, Miss Clark. His voice was smooth, cultured, and absolutely lethal in its charm. My son has been asking for you. Emma looked at the boy, who was watching her with more life in his eyes than she'd seen before. Asking? In his way. Dante's expression softened almost imperceptibly when he looked at his son. He's been more animated these past few days, eating better, sleeping through the night for the first time in months. His dark eyes found hers again. That's because of you. I just talked to him like a person, Emma said. He deserves that. You'd be surprised how rare that is. Something bitter crossed Dante's face. Most people see my son as either a tragedy to pity or a tool to leverage. You saw him as a child who needed kindness. The boy reached into his pocket and withdrew a small piece of paper folded carefully into a square. He held it out to Emma with both hands, like an offering. Emma accepted it gently, aware of Dante's intense scrutiny as she unfolded it. Inside was a crayon drawing, simple but clear, a stick figure with yellow hair, her, standing next to a smaller stick figure, both smiling. Above them, the boy had written in careful letters, "Thank you." Emma's eyes stung with unexpected tears. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. The boy's smile was bigger this time, brief but genuine. You've given me back something I thought was lost forever, Dante said quietly. Hope that my son could still connect with the world. That's not a debt I take lightly, Miss Clark. It's Emma. And you don't owe me anything. I disagree. He gestured to the empty chair at their table, a violation of every rule the restaurant had about staff fraternizing with guests. Sit with us, please. I'm working. Giuseppe won't mind. It was said with the casual certainty of someone who owned the restaurant, which Emma was beginning to suspect might be literally true. She sat. For the next hour, Emma shared their dinner while the restaurant flowed around them like they existed in a separate reality. Dante asked her questions. Where she was from, what had brought her to the city, what she wanted from life. Normal questions, but delivered with an intensity that made each answer feel significant. She told him about growing up in foster care, about putting herself through community college, about dreams of maybe opening her own small cafe someday where people could feel welcome and safe. She left out the harder parts, the homes where she hadn't been safe, the reasons she'd learned to read people quickly, to sense danger before it arrived. She didn't mention that she could sense danger radiating from him like heat from a furnace, even while he was being nothing but respectful and charming. "You have ambitions," Dante observed. "That's good. Rare, but good." "What about you?" Emma asked, then immediately wondered if she'd crossed another invisible line. "What do you want from life?" His laugh was soft and genuinely amused. "No one asks me what I want. They're usually too busy fearing what I might take. I'm asking." Dante looked at his son, who was actually eating his dinner without prompting, occasionally glancing at Emma like making sure she was still real. "I want my son to be happy, to have the childhood that was stolen from him, to grow up knowing that love and safety exist, even in a world that showed him otherwise far too early." "That's beautiful," Emma said honestly. "That's impossible." His voice hardened just slightly. "My world doesn't create happy childhoods. It destroys them." "Then maybe you're in the wrong world." The words hung between them like a challenge. Around the restaurant, conversations continued. Servers moved with practiced efficiency. The jazz played softly. But at their table, Emma had just suggested the impossible to a man who made the impossible happen for a living, just usually in darker ways. Dante studied her with those calculating eyes that probably saw through every lie, every deception he'd encountered in a life built on violence and power. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Emma Clark." "Maybe both," she admitted. "I tend to say what I think." "I've noticed." He leaned back, and even that small movement seemed predatory. "Here's what I think. I think you're dangerous." Emma's laugh caught in her throat. "Me? You're the one everyone's terrified of." "Exactly. Everyone fears me, so everyone is predictable." "But you—" He gestured to where his son was now drawing another picture on the white tablecloth with a pen. "You walk into danger without flinching, because you're not afraid of me. That makes you unpredictable. Unpredictable people are dangerous." "I didn't say I wasn't afraid," Emma corrected quietly. "I just said your son deserved better." Something shifted in Dante's expression. For just a moment, the dangerous crime lord disappeared, and she saw something raw underneath. A father drowning in guilt, a man trapped by choices made long ago, someone who'd forgotten that alternatives existed. "Come to dinner with us tomorrow," he said. "Not here, somewhere else. Let me show you my gratitude properly. Mr. Moretti." "Dante." "Dante," Emma continued. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because you're a crime lord, because people disappear when they cross you. Because every instinct I have is screaming that getting closer to you is the worst decision I could possibly make. Because we're from completely different worlds," she said instead. "Good." Dante's smile was dangerous and absolutely devastating. "I've grown tired of my world. Maybe I need to see yours." Before Emma could respond, his phone buzzed. The shift in his demeanor was instantaneous. The careful father and charming dinner companion vanished, replaced by something cold and lethal. He glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Excuse me," he said, standing with fluid grace. "I need to handle something. Marco will settle the bill." He leaned down to kiss his son's forehead, whispering something in Italian that made the boy nod seriously. Then Dante looked at Emma with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Think about it," he said. "One dinner. No obligations. Just a thank you from a grateful father." He walked toward the exit, and Emma watched as two men in dark suits materialized from separate corners of the restaurant. Bodyguards she hadn't even noticed. They flanked him as he left, and she caught a glimpse of something at Dante's wrist as his blazer sleeve shifted. A tattoo. Dark ink that looked like family symbols wrapped around his skin. Permanent marks of allegiance and belonging to a world she knew nothing about. After he left, Emma sat with the boy for another few minutes. He showed her his drawing. This time, 3 stick figures. Him, her, and someone taller that could only be his father. A family. "That's lovely," Emma whispered, even as her heart ached at the impossibility it represented. Sophia appeared at her elbow as soon as the boy was collected by an older woman Emma assumed was a nanny or guardian. "You're playing with fire," Sophia warned. "Dante Moretti doesn't just have dinner with people. He doesn't just thank people. When he shows interest in someone, it means something. Something dangerous. He's just grateful I was kind to his son." "Emma." Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. "Men like Dante Moretti don't know how to just be grateful. They know how to possess. They know how to own. And they know how to destroy anything that threatens what's theirs." That night, lying in her small apartment, Emma stared at the drawing the boy had given her. She should refuse any further contact. She should find another job, disappear into the city, protect herself from whatever darkness swirled around the Moretti family. But when she closed her eyes, she saw that child's smile. She saw the vulnerability in Dante's face when he talked about wanting his son to be happy. She saw 2 people trapped in a world of violence and fear, reaching toward something better. And despite every logical thought telling her to run, Emma found herself wondering what it would be like to have dinner with Dante Moretti in a world where danger and desire weren't so impossibly intertwined. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The offer stands. Saturday, 7 o'clock. I'll send a car." Emma stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "I'll meet you there. Tell me where." She hit send before she could change her mind. The address Dante texted her wasn't a restaurant. It was a private address in a neighborhood where she'd never ventured. The kind of place where old money and new power created their own enclosed reality, separate from the rest of the city's chaos. Emma stood outside the building Saturday evening in the best dress she owned. Simple black, nothing fancy, but clean and presentable. She'd told herself a dozen times not to come. She'd almost turned back 3 times on the subway ride over. But curiosity and something more dangerous than curiosity had brought her here anyway. The doorman greeted her by name before she could announce herself. "Miss Clark, Mr. Moretti is expecting you. Top floor." The elevator was the kind with mirrors and soft lighting that made everything feel like a dream or a trap, depending on your perspective. Emma watched her reflection rise through the building, wondering what version of herself would step out when the doors opened. They revealed a private foyer. Beyond that, massive doors stood slightly ajar. Music drifted out, something classical and Italian, emotional in a way that made her chest tight. Emma knocked softly, and the door opened immediately. Dante Moretti stood there in dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing more of those tattoos she'd glimpsed before. Without the blazer, without the formal presentation, he looked younger. Still dangerous, but more human somehow. More real. "You came," he said, and there was genuine relief in his voice. "I wasn't certain you would." "Neither was I," Emma admitted. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face from intimidating to absolutely breathtaking. "Honesty, I appreciate that." He stepped aside. "Please come in." The penthouse was exactly what she'd expected, and nothing like it simultaneously. Yes, there was obvious wealth. The art on the walls, the furniture that looked European and expensive, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city like a kingdom spread before its ruler. But there were also signs of actual life. Children's drawings on the refrigerator, toys in a basket by the fireplace, photos on the mantel showing Dante and his son at various ages, smiling in moments of genuine happiness that proved such moments existed, at least sometimes. "Is your son here?" Emma asked. "He's with my mother for the evening. I wanted to speak with you privately." Dante gestured toward the dining area where a table was set for 2, candles already glowing softly. "I hope you don't mind. I thought this would be more comfortable than a public restaurant." More intimate, Emma thought. More dangerous. But she nodded and let him guide her to the table. Dinner was incredible. Homemade pasta, wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent, dessert that tasted like clouds and sin. But the real revelation was Dante himself. Away from the restaurant, away from the eyes of his world, he was different. He talked about his son with fierce devotion, about the challenges of single fatherhood, about the guilt that consumed him daily. He talked about growing up in the Moretti family, about choices made before he was old enough to understand their consequences, about a life path determined before birth. "I didn't choose this," he said at one point, gesturing vaguely at the luxury surrounding them. "Not really. When you're born into certain families, your destiny is written in blood before you take your first breath." "You could leave," Emma suggested quietly. Dante laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't leave the family. Not alive." He paused, then added more softly, "Besides, who would I be without it? This is all I know. This is all I'm good at." "You're a good father." "Am I?" His voice turned rough with emotion. "My son watched his mother die because of my enemies, because of the life I built. He hasn't spoken in 2 years, Emma. 2 years of silence because I couldn't protect him from the consequences of my choices." Emma reached across the table without thinking and placed her hand over his. Dante's eyes dropped to their joined hands like he'd been struck. His hand was warm, strong, with calluses that suggested violence she didn't want to imagine. "He smiled because of you," Emma said. "That's not nothing. That's everything." Dante turned his hand over, threading their fingers together in a way that felt both tender and possessive. "You're remarkable, you know that?" "I'm really not. I'm just someone who tries to be kind. In my world, kindness is rarer than diamonds and infinitely more valuable." He studied their joined hands. "I haven't felt hope in a very long time, Emma. Not until I watched you talk to my son like he mattered. Like he was more than just a broken thing to be pitied." The air between them had changed. What started as gratitude had shifted into something more complex, more dangerous. Emma could feel it in the way Dante was looking at her now. Not like a waitress, not like someone he owed a debt, but like someone who'd awakened something he'd thought permanently dormant. "I should tell you who I really am," Dante said. "What I really do. You deserve to know what you're stepping into." "Dante? I run the Moretti organization. We control territories, businesses, protection services. We handle problems that can't be solved through legal means. We have influence with politicians, judges, police. We make people disappear when they become threats." His voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "I've destroyed families. I've given orders that ended lives. I've built an empire on fear and violence because that's what my father did. And his father before him." Emma's hand remained in his, even as her pulse quickened with the confirmation of everything she'd suspected. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand what being in my life means. I want you to choose freely, with complete knowledge." He squeezed her hand gently. "And because despite every logical reason to push you away, to keep you safe from my world, I find myself wanting you to stay anyway." "Why?" Emma's voice barely rose above a whisper. Dante stood, pulling her up with him until they faced each other beside the table. The city glittered below them through the windows, millions of lives playing out in the darkness. But here, in this moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. "Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human," he said. "Not a crime lord. Not a weapon. Just a man who wants something good in his life for once." "I scare you," Emma realized. "That's what you meant at the restaurant. I'm dangerous to you because I make you feel things you'd rather not feel." "Terrified," Dante admitted. His free hand came up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. "You make me want things that will get you killed. That will get my son hurt. That will destroy everything I've built to protect the people I love. Then you should let me go." "I should." His thumb traced her cheekbone with a touch that sent shivers through her entire body. "I absolutely should send you away and never see you again. It would be the smart thing, the safe thing. But I've spent my entire life doing the smart thing, and it's left me empty." His voice dropped to barely more than a breath. "You're the first truly dangerous choice I've wanted to make in years." They were so close now that Emma could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the exact moment his careful control began to fracture. She should step back. She should leave right now, tonight, before whatever this was between them became something neither could walk away from. Instead, she rose on her tiptoes and closed the final distance between them. The kiss started soft, questioning, almost tentative, like Dante was giving her every chance to retreat. But when Emma's hands slid up his chest to wrap around his neck, when she pressed closer with clear intent, something in him unleashed. He kissed her like a man starving, like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. One arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her impossibly closer while his other hand tangled in her hair. The kiss deepened, became almost desperate, became a promise and a warning all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake." "Probably," Emma agreed, even as her fingers traced the tattoos on his forearms, symbols of family, of loyalty, of a world that would never accept her. "You should run from me, Emma Clark, as fast and far as you can." "I know, but you won't." It wasn't a question. "No," she whispered against his lips. "I won't." Dante kissed her again, slower this time, but no less intense. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with want and worry, and something that might have been desperation. "I can't promise you safety," he said. "I can't promise you a normal life. All I can promise is that I will protect you with everything I have, for as long as I possibly can." That's a terrifying promise. It's the only one I can make honestly. His hand tightened in her hair, protective and possessive. "My enemies will see you as a weakness. My allies will question my judgment. This path leads nowhere good, Emma. Please understand that." "Then why are we choosing it?" Dante's smile was sad and beautiful. "Because despite everything, despite the danger, the impossibility, the absolute certainty that this ends in pain, you're already mine, and I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway." They stood there in the candlelight, two people from impossible worlds, knowing they were making the worst decision possible and choosing it anyway. Outside, the city continued its eternal dance of darkness and light, chaos and order. But Emma barely noticed. Because Dante Moretti was looking at her like she was something precious and breakable and worth destroying the world to protect. And God help her, Emma was looking back like he was a puzzle she could solve, a man she could save, a heart she could heal despite all evidence suggesting otherwise. When Dante's phone buzzed insistently in his pocket, he ignored it. When it buzzed again, he silenced it entirely. For this one night, he let the empire wait. For this one night, he was just a man with a woman he shouldn't want and couldn't resist. They talked until the candles burned low, learning each other in the way new lovers do, discovering favorite books, childhood memories, dreams set aside and hopes held secret. And when Emma finally left near midnight, Dante walked her to the elevator, with his hand never leaving the small of her back. "Tomorrow," he said as the doors began to close. "I want to see you tomorrow." "I work the dinner shift," Emma replied. "Then I'll be there at 7, like always." His smile was equal parts promise and warning. "But everything's different now, Emma. You understand that?" She did. She absolutely did. As the elevator descended, Emma could still feel the ghost of his touch on her skin, could still taste him on her lips. She was falling for a man who'd built his life on violence and control. She was stepping into a world that destroyed innocent people like her without a second thought. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But she was also alive in a way she'd never been before, and despite every warning sign screaming at her to run, Emma knew she was already too far gone to turn back now. Above her, in his penthouse, Dante Moretti stood at the window, watching the city that bowed to his will. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, He felt something that might have been happiness, fragile, impossible, and absolutely doomed. But for tonight, for this moment, it was enough. The next 3 weeks existed in a strange dual reality. By day, Emma worked her shifts at Giovanni's, smiling professionally at guests who had no idea their waitress was secretly entangled with one of the most dangerous men in the city. By night, she entered Dante's world, private dinners at his penthouse, quiet evenings where his son would draw pictures while they talked, stolen moments that felt simultaneously normal and completely surreal. Luca, she'd learned the boy's name during week 2, had started responding to her presence with genuine excitement. Still silent, still trapped behind whatever wall his trauma had built, but his eyes would light up when she arrived. He'd show her his schoolwork, his drawings, the things that mattered to him in the wordless language they'd developed. Dante watched these interactions with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. Gratitude, certainly. But also something darker. Fear, maybe. Or the dawning realization that she was becoming essential in a way that made her vulnerable. "You're good with him," Dante said one evening after Luca had gone to bed. They sat on his balcony overlooking the city, the autumn air cool against their skin. Better than anyone has been since his mother. "He's easy to love," Emma said honestly. "He just needed someone to see him." "And what about his father?" Dante's voice was carefully casual. "Is he easy to love?" Emma turned to study him. 3 weeks of growing intimacy had revealed layers beneath the crime lord exterior. She'd seen him patient with Luca, gentle with elderly staff at the restaurant, generous to people who served him. She'd also seen the other side, the coldness when his phone rang with certain calls, the way his entire demeanor shifted when business intruded, the darkness that lived behind his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. "You're complicated," she answered carefully. "You're 2 different people, the man with your son and the man who runs an empire built on fear. And which one are you falling for?" The question hung between them like a confession. Because she was falling, had been falling since that first moment when she dared approach his table, when she'd seen vulnerability behind power, humanity behind reputation. "Both, I think," Emma whispered. "God help me. Both." Dante reached for her hand, threading their fingers together in the gesture that had become theirs. "I told you I was dangerous." "You did." She squeezed his fingers. "I'm choosing to stay anyway." He pulled her closer, until she was sitting across his lap, her head resting against his shoulder while the city spread below them like a living painting. "My mother wants to meet you," he said after a long moment. "She says any woman who can make Luca smile deserves to be properly welcomed into the family." Family. The word sent a thrill of both warmth and terror through Emma's chest. "Is that what I am? Part of the family?" "You're something," Dante murmured against her hair. "I'm still figuring out exactly what, but yes, Emma. If you want to be, if you can handle what that means, then yes." "What does it mean?" His arms tightened around her. "It means you're under our protection. It means anyone who touches you answers to me. It means you'll never want for anything material." He paused, and his voice dropped. "It also means you become a target. It means rival families will see you as leverage. It means your normal life ends the moment you accept this." "I don't have much of a normal life to end," Emma pointed out. "No family, few friends, a tiny apartment and a waitressing job that pays enough to survive but not enough to really live. You deserve better than survival." "Maybe. But Dante—" She shifted to look at his face, to see his eyes in the moonlight. "I need you to understand something. I'm not here for your money or your power. I don't want luxury or protection. I'm here because I see who you could be, who you are when you let yourself forget the empire for a moment." Something raw crossed his expression. "You see someone who doesn't exist. I see someone who's trapped, who was born into this and never got to choose." Emma cupped his face with both hands. "You said your destiny was written in blood before you were born, but destinies can be rewritten, Dante, if you're brave enough." You want me to leave? It wasn't a question. You want me to walk away from the family, from the organization, from everything I am. I want you to be free, to give Luca a life where he doesn't have to learn to be a crime lord before he learns to tie his shoes. Emma's eyes stung with frustrated tears. But I know that's impossible. I know what asking you to leave means. I know people don't just walk away from this life. No, Dante agreed quietly. They don't. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other while an impossible dream hung between them. A future where Dante was just a father, just a man, just someone who could love freely without calculating the cost in blood and loyalty. Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket, shattering the moment. She glanced at it and froze. A text from Sophia. Where are you? Some men were at the restaurant asking about you. Scary men. They wanted to know your schedule, your address. Marco wouldn't tell them anything but Emma. I'm worried. Dante saw her face change and immediately sat forward, his entire demeanor shifting to something predatory. What is it? Emma showed him the text. She watched his expression harden into something cold and lethal, the crime lord emerging fully, pushing aside the gentle father and tender lover she'd been holding moments before. Fuck. He was on his feet instantly, phone in hand, speed dialing someone. Antonio? I need eyes on Giovanni's now. Someone's asking questions about Emma Clark. A pause. I don't care if it's midnight. Get people there now. He paced the balcony like a caged predator while making 3 more calls in rapid Italian that Emma couldn't follow. When he finally turned back to her, his face was a mask of controlled fury and barely contained fear. The Calabrese family, he said tightly. My primary rivals. They must have noticed you coming here, noticed us together. They're gathering information, which means they're planning something. Emma's blood went cold. Planning what? What? To use you against me. Dante's hands clenched into fists. This is exactly what I warned you about. This is why being with me is dangerous. They'll take you, hurt you, maybe kill you, all to send me a message, to weaken my position, to start a war they think they can win. So what do? We? Dante laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, Emma, there is no we in this. I do what I should have done 3 weeks ago. I send you away where they can't find you. What? No. Emma stood, panic flooding through her. You can't just make me disappear because your world is complicated. I can and I will if it keeps you alive. His voice was absolute steel now. Tomorrow my people will move you to a safe location. Somewhere the Calabrese family can't reach. You'll stay there until this situation is handled. Handled how? Emma demanded, even though she already knew. You mean until you deal with them, until whatever dealing with them means in your world. Dante's silence was answer enough. I won't hide, Emma said firmly. I won't let you fight some war because I was foolish enough to fall for you. This isn't about foolishness. Dante closed the distance between them, gripping her shoulders with barely restrained intensity. This is about survival. Mine, yours, Luca's. The Calabrese family doesn't play games, Emma. If they've decided your leverage, they won't hesitate to take you. And what they'll do to you? His voice cracked slightly. I can't let that happen. I won't. Then end it, Emma said desperately. Find a way to make peace. Talk to them. There has to be another solution besides war. There isn't. Not in my world. Dante pulled her against his chest, holding her like he was already losing her. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry I dragged you into this. Sophia was right. Good people don't survive when they get involved with men like me. Emma clutched his shirt, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. I'm not going anywhere. If they want to use me as leverage, let them try. But I won't hide while you risk everything. Emma, no. She pulled back to look at him. You said I was yours. You said you'd protect me with everything you had. So protect me, Dante. But don't push me away. Don't make me another thing you lose because you're too afraid to fight for what matters. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he kissed her with a desperation that tasted like goodbye and promises he couldn't keep. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were dark with resignation. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met," he muttered. "You're the most infuriating man I've ever met," she countered. "We're a perfect match." Despite everything, Dante's lips twitched toward a smile. "Stay here tonight. I'll have someone get your things from your apartment tomorrow. You're not going back there. It's not safe anymore." "Dante, please." The word came out raw. "Let me keep you close. Let me know you're safe under my roof, with my people watching every entrance. That's the compromise, Emma. Stay here where I can protect you, or I send you away. Those are the only options." Emma nodded slowly, knowing she'd pushed as far as she could. "Okay, I'll stay." But as Dante made more calls, as his people mobilized throughout the city, as the night transformed from romantic to tactical, Emma felt the weight of reality settling over them like a shroud. She'd walked into his world with eyes open, but understanding danger intellectually and living it were entirely different things. Somewhere out there, people who saw her as nothing more than a weapon to use against Dante were planning, strategizing, preparing to strike. And for the first time since this began, Emma felt genuinely afraid. Dante found her on the balcony an hour later, staring at the city with her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. He draped his jacket over her shoulders and pulled her back against his chest. "I will keep you safe," he promised quietly. "Whatever it costs. Whatever I have to do. You and Luca are everything that matters now. Don't do anything you can't come back from," Emma whispered. "Don't become a monster to protect me." Dante's laugh was bitter. "I'm already a monster, sweetheart. I've been one for years. The only difference now is that I have something worth being monstrous for." They stood together watching the city sleep, two people caught in forces larger than themselves, holding tight to something beautiful and impossible, while darkness gathered at the edges, waiting for its moment to strike. Tomorrow the war would begin in earnest. Tomorrow, Dante would remind the Calabrese family why the Moretti name commanded fear and respect across 5 boroughs. But tonight, for these final quiet hours, he was just a man holding the woman he loved, knowing that love itself had become the most dangerous weapon anyone could use against him. The next 2 weeks were a blur of tension and waiting. Emma lived in Dante's penthouse like a princess in a very dangerous tower. Bodyguards stationed themselves at every entrance. Her movements were monitored, tracked, protected with an intensity that felt both suffocating and necessary. Dante himself was different. The gentle lover had been replaced by the crime lord in full, cold, calculating, constantly on his phone conducting business in Italian that Emma knew better than to ask about. He'd come home late, sometimes with blood on his knuckles that he wouldn't explain, sometimes with that dead look in his eyes that suggested he'd done things that would haunt him later. But with Luca, he remained patient and loving. And with Emma, in those rare, quiet moments when business allowed, he was tender in a way that broke her heart. "It's almost over," he told her one night, lying in bed with her head on his chest. "The Calabrese family made their move. We responded. Now it's just a matter of time before they understand they can't win this war." "How many people have died?" Emma asked quietly. Dante's silence was answer enough. "I'm sorry," Emma whispered. "I'm sorry my presence caused this." "No." His arms tightened around her. "This war has been brewing for years. The Calabrese family has been pushing boundaries, testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. You didn't cause this, Emma. You just gave them an excuse to finally act on plans they already had. That doesn't make me feel better." "It should. Because once we finish this, once they understand that coming after what's mine has consequences, you'll be safe. Truly safe." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "No one will dare touch you again. And what about you? Will you be safe?" Dante laughed softly. "Men like me are never safe, sweetheart. We just get very good at managing the danger." 3 days later, everything changed. Emma was in the kitchen making breakfast while Luca drew at the table. their morning routine that had become precious in its normalcy. Dante had left early for a meeting he'd been cryptic about, promising to return by lunch. When the elevator opened and he stepped out at 11 instead, Emma knew immediately that something significant had happened. He looked lighter. The darkness that had haunted his expression for weeks was still there, but diminished somehow, like a weight had been partially lifted. "It's done," Dante said without preamble. "The Calabrese family has agreed to terms. The war is over." Emma set down the spatula carefully. "Terms? What kind of terms?" "The kind that cost everything and nothing." Dante moved to pour himself coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "I gave them territory on the docks. I conceded 3 business operations they wanted. I agreed to pay reparations for their losses." "That sounds like you lost." "I did." Dante's smile was tired but genuine. "By every traditional measure, I surrendered. I gave them what they wanted instead of fighting until one of our families was destroyed." Emma studied him carefully. "You did that on purpose. You could have won, couldn't you? Could have crushed them completely." "Yes." He set down the coffee and crossed to where she stood, cupping her face in his hands. "But winning that way would have required becoming something I no longer want to be. It would have required sacrificing my humanity completely for the sake of empire. You chose differently. I chose you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I chose the possibility of a life where I don't have to explain blood on my hands to the woman I love. I chose showing my son that there are alternatives to endless violence." Emma's breath caught. "You love me?" "Desperately. Completely. In a way that terrifies me." Dante pressed his forehead to hers. "You've ruined me for the life I had before, Emma Clark. You've made me want impossible things. A normal family. A peaceful existence. A future where my son doesn't inherit an empire built on fear." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done." The words came out strong and certain. "Done with the organization. Done with territory wars and power plays and all the things that made me a monster. I'm negotiating my exit from the family business." Emma pulled back to stare at him. "You can't just leave. You said people don't leave this life." "They don't. Usually." Dante's expression was complicated, hopeful and terrified and determined. "But I have leverage they can't ignore. I have information, connections, resources that make me more valuable as an ally than as an enemy. And I have my mother's support. She's wanted me out for years." "Your mother?" "She never wanted this life for me. She buried my father because of this life. She's watched me become exactly what she feared." Dante's voice roughened with emotion. "When I told her I wanted out, that I'd found someone who made me want more than power and control, she cried. Said she'd been waiting 20 years for me to finally want to be free." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "This is really happening? You're really leaving?" "I am. We are." He pulled her close, holding her like she was his anchor to something better. "It will take time. Months of negotiations, arrangements, ensuring everyone who depends on me is protected. But yes, Emma, I'm choosing you. I'm choosing Luca. I'm choosing a life where love matters more than loyalty to a legacy I never asked for." From the table, a small sound made them both turn. Luca was standing, staring at them with wide eyes. Tears were streaming down his face. Not sad tears, but something that looked like overwhelming emotion finally finding release. Then he opened his mouth, and for the first time in 2 years, he spoke. "Papa?" The single word was barely a whisper, rough with disuse and choked with feeling. But it was real. It was sound. It was their broken boy finding his voice again. Dante crossed the room in 3 strides and swept Luca into his arms, both of them crying now. Emma stood frozen, watching something impossible and beautiful unfold. A family healing, a child reclaiming what trauma had stolen, a father holding his son while they both fell apart in the best possible way. "You spoke," Dante was saying over and over. "You spoke, my brave boy. You found your voice." Luca's small arms wrapped around his father's neck. "I love you, Papa. I love Emma too. Emma's knees nearly gave out. She moved to join them, wrapping her arms around both Moretti men, and they stood there in the kitchen crying and laughing and holding each other like they'd survived something terrible and come out the other side transformed. When they finally separated, Luca's smile was radiant. Can Emma stay? Forever? Dante looked at Emma with an expression that held every emotion he'd probably never allowed himself to feel before. I hope so, if she'll have us, if she can handle a retired crime lord and his talkative son. Talkative? Emma laughed through her tears. He said like 8 words. It's a start, Luca said seriously, and they all laughed at the miracle of his voice, at the impossibility of this moment, at the sheer joy of watching hope become real. That evening, after Luca had finally exhausted himself talking and fallen asleep early, Emma and Dante sat on the balcony again. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the beginning of something instead of the end. What will you do? Emma asked. If you're not running an empire? I have legitimate businesses, real estate, investments, restaurants, including Giovanni's, yes. Dante smiled at her expression. I told you I owned it. Most of my wealth is actually legal now. The family operations were obligation more than necessity. So you'll be a businessman. I'll be a father first, a partner second. He pulled her into his lap. And maybe, eventually, a husband. If you want that. If you can see yourself married to someone with my history. Are you proposing? Not yet. Not until I'm completely free of the old life. Not until I can offer you a future without shadows. Dante's hands framed her face gently. But yes, Emma. Eventually, if you'll have me. I want to marry you. I want you to be Luca's mother officially. I want to build something clean and good with you. Emma kissed him softly. Then I'll wait. I'll wait until you're free, and then I'll say yes. You're already saying yes? I've been saying yes since the moment I picked up your son's fork and decided to treat him like he mattered. Emma smiled against his lips. I just didn't know it yet. They sat together while the city transformed from day to night. While somewhere below them, Dante's former world continued its eternal dance of power and violence. But up here, in this moment, they were just 2 people who'd found each other across impossible divides, 2 people choosing love over legacy, 2 people proving that sometimes the bravest thing a powerful man can do is walk away from power for something infinitely more valuable. Tomorrow would bring more negotiations, more arrangements, more steps toward freedom. But tonight, they had each other. Tonight, they had Luca's voice returned like a gift. Tonight, they had hope. And for people who'd both spent most of their lives with very little hope to hold on to, that was more than enough. 6 months later, Emma stood in the kitchen of a house she still couldn't quite believe was real. Not a penthouse. Dante had sold that along with most of his old life. This was a proper home in the suburbs, with a yard where Luca played, with neighbors who waved hello and didn't whisper about organized crime. A home where normal things happened, where the biggest danger was burning dinner, not rival families planning revenge. The back door opened and Luca burst in, dirt on his knees and pure joy on his face. Emma, come see. I built a whole castle in the sandbox. A castle? That's amazing. Emma wiped her hands on a towel. Show me this architectural masterpiece. Luca grabbed her hand and pulled her outside, chattering constantly about his creation. His voice was still the most beautiful sound Emma had ever heard. Proof that healing was possible, that trauma didn't have to be permanent, that love could actually save people. In the yard, Dante was assembling a barbecue grill with the focused intensity he once reserved for much more dangerous operations. He'd changed too, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt instead of expensive suits, his hair less perfectly styled. His entire demeanor relaxed in a way that suggested he'd finally exhaled after holding his breath for decades. Your son is a master builder, Emma announced. Dante looked up and smiled, the real, unguarded smile that had taken months to appear regularly. He gets it from his mother. She was an artist. They could talk about Luca's mother now, could honor her memory without drowning in guilt. Dante had taken Luca to therapy, had dealt with his own trauma, had done the hard work of healing instead of just burying pain under power and control. "The grill is almost ready," Dante said. "My mother will be here in an hour with enough food to feed an army." "Your mother always brings enough food to feed an army," Emma laughed. "I think she's trying to fatten me up. She's trying to welcome you properly into the family." Dante set down his tools and crossed to wrap his arms around Emma's waist from behind. "She loves you, says you saved both her boys." "I didn't save anyone. We saved each other." "Emma, Papa, look at my castle!" Luca was bouncing with excitement, pointing at his elaborate sand creation. They admired it properly, offering the kind of enthusiastic praise that made Luca beam with pride. Then Dante's phone buzzed. Not the ominous buzz of his old life, but a normal notification. He glanced at it and his expression shifted to something Emma couldn't quite read. "What is it?" she asked. "Final papers just came through. I'm officially out." Dante's voice was thick with emotion. "No more ties to the organization. No more obligations. I'm just Dante Moretti, private citizen." Emma threw her arms around him, and he lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while Luca cheered. When Dante set her down, there were tears in his eyes. The good kind. The kind that meant freedom and new beginnings and impossible dreams becoming real. "So?" Emma asked. "What does a former crime lord do on his first day of complete freedom?" Dante knelt down right there in the grass, pulling a small box from his pocket. Luca gasped with excitement. Clearly he'd known this was coming. "He asks the woman who saved his life if she'll do him the honor of making this permanent," Dante said, opening the box to reveal a ring that was beautiful but not ostentatious. Perfect for someone who valued love over luxury. Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "Dante, I know we've only known each other 8 months. I know by conventional standards this is fast." His voice was steady despite the emotion clear in his eyes. "But I also know that you're the best thing that ever happened to me and my son. I know that every day with you is better than a lifetime without you. I know that I want to spend the rest of my life being the man you see when you look at me. Not the monster I was, but the father and partner and eventually husband I'm becoming." "Say yes," Luca encouraged helpfully. Emma laughed through her tears. "Yes, God, yes, 1,000 times yes." Dante slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her properly while Luca made exaggerated gagging sounds that suggested he was a completely normal 8-year-old now. When they finally broke apart, Emma realized that Dante's mother had arrived and was watching from the patio with her hands clasped over her heart. "Finally." "Mrs. Moretti called out. "I told him to ask you months ago." The afternoon dissolved into celebration. Dante's mother had indeed brought enough food for an army. Neighbors dropped by and were warmly welcomed. Luca showed everyone his castle and his new drawings and talked enough for 3 children, making up for 2 years of silence. As evening fell and guests departed, Emma found herself on the back porch with Dante, watching Luca chase fireflies in the yard. Their yard, their home, their life that somehow, impossibly, had become real. "Are you happy?" Dante asked quietly. "Deliriously," Emma answered honestly. "Are you? I didn't know I could be this happy. I didn't know this kind of peace existed." He pulled her closer. "You know what's strange? I spent 20 years building power, accumulating territory, making people fear me. And none of it made me feel half as powerful as I do right now. Watching my son laugh in our yard while wearing your ring on my finger. That's because real power isn't making people fear you," Emma said softly. "It's having something worth protecting, someone worth being better for." Philosophical wisdom from the woman who started as my son's waitress. "Hey, I'm an excellent waitress. I make philosophy look easy." Emma grinned. "Also, I'm now apparently marrying a reformed crime lord, so my life got weird fast." "Reformed is generous. I'm still figuring out how to be normal." "Nobody's normal, Dante. We're all just figuring it out as we go." She turned to look at him properly. But you're doing amazing. You've given Luca a childhood. You've given yourself a chance at redemption. And you've given me— Her voice caught. You've given me a family. A real one. Not the foster care version. Not people obligated to take care of me. But people who chose me. Who want me. Dante kissed her forehead. We'll always want you. You're stuck with us now. Good. Because you're stuck with me too. Through barbecues and school plays and all the boring normal things that apparently make life worth living. I love boring normal things now. Who knew? They stood together watching their son play, watching their future unfold in firefly light and laughter. Tomorrow, Dante would start his new job as a legitimate business consultant. Emma would continue her community college classes toward that cafe she still dreamed of opening. Luca would go to 3rd grade and make friends and be wonderfully, blessedly ordinary. The Moretti empire would continue without Dante. His cousin had taken control with his blessing, maintaining the family name while Dante built something entirely different, something clean, something good. Thank you, Dante said eventually, for seeing past what I was to what I could become. Thank you for being brave enough to become it. Emma squeezed his hand. Not many people walk away from that kind of power. Not many people have a reason to. He looked at her with absolute certainty. But you and Luca, you're worth more than any empire. Worth more than any legacy. You're worth everything. They called Luca in as darkness fell completely, and together the three of them went inside their home, their safe, normal, wonderfully boring home, where the biggest danger was stepping on Luca's scattered toys, and the only thing worth fighting for was each other. Emma had entered Dante's world as a waitress who dared to show kindness to a silent child. She was leaving it as a fiancée, as a mother, as the woman who'd proven that even the most dangerous men could choose redemption if given a reason. And Dante, once feared across 5 boroughs as the ruthless Moretti heir, had traded his empire for something infinitely more valuable, a chance to be just a man, just a father, just someone who loved fiercely and hoped bravely and believed that tomorrow could be better than today. In the end, they'd both won what they'd been searching for their entire lives. Someone who saw their worst and loved them anyway. Someone who made ordinary magic and everyday miracles feel possible. Someone worth building an entirely new life for, one peaceful day at a time. And that, Emma thought as she watched Dante tuck Luca into bed with gentle patience as she wore a ring that symbolized impossible choices and brave new beginnings, was the greatest power of all. Not control, not fear, not empire. Just love. Simple, complicated, world-changing love. And it was more than enough.